Hello, welcome to Rogue Reviews number 6. And today we're looking at something pretty special, KINGSBURG. This is probably one of our most favourite games in our family. We all love it. We play it quite a lot. It's one of my wife's favourite games of all time. The idea is that you are a governor of a fantasy kingdom. Now the King Tritus has put you in charge of looking after things for the next 5 years. Now in that time you must develop the kingdom, build buildings, repel invaders, amass riches and prove your worth. If at the end of those 5 years you have gained the greatest glory, power and victory points, you win the game. But most of all, you will have proved your worth as a citizen of KINGSBURG. Now, this has to be a great balanced game for us between the idea of theme-heavy adventure and purely mechanics-based strategy. As my wife put it, it kind of combines the idea of some random elements with strategy, with fun. There's so much in it to enjoy. We reach for it over and over and over again. Initially, when we first bought this, we played it 12 times in the first year. It was that good. And we just carried on playing it more and more and more since. Now, the production value is great. The components are lovely. The game itself just gives you so much joy to play because there is good strategy here. There is lots of replayability. In the base game itself is absolutely fantastic. We played the base game for years, very happily. But finally I managed to pick up the expansion pack called To Forge a Realm. And this has added really welcome extras to our game. The game itself still stands magnificently, but that just basically manages to improve it without taking away what makes the base game great. Now, I really hope you will be able to play this. If you can find it, buy it. I know there's a second edition out. I've not played the second edition. This is the original version. So I can't say for sure exactly what's changed. In terms of the look of this game, we love the look of this game. We love the components. So let's have a closer look then, shall we? Okay, so how does KINGSBURG play? Well, the actual base game is designed from a very, very old game called To Court a King, and it's kind of the latest iteration of this main idea. Your turn on your go is basically to roll your set of coloured dice. For example, if you were red, you would roll, for example, a 5, a 3 and a 1. Now, these are the king's advisors, basically going from the lowest jester in the land, the lowest fool, up to the king himself. You take your 3 dice and you can basically use these to consult one or more advisors. For example, if you wish, you could combine the 5, the 3 and the 1 and put them all on number 9 and visit number 9. Or, for example, you could put the 5 and the 3 on number 8, and if nobody else takes it, put the 1 on number 1. Or equally, the 5 and the 4, or the 5 and the 3 and the 1. You get the idea. Of course, all the other players are doing this as well. So there's a certain amount of competition. For example, if green was playing, good roll for green. So maybe, for example, green goes for the 12 and the 2. Problem here. So, as we can see, the blue players rolled a 6, a 6 and a 3. Now, they can't go for the 12 because the green players already go for the 12. So they might want to go for the 15, for example, or split up as a 9 and a 6. You get the idea. So, there's a brilliant set of balancing mechanics in this game. For example, the person who rolls the lowest combined total on their 3 dice gets to go first. So basically they get the first stab because they're not going to get as well as the higher rolling players. And it goes in reverse turn order here. If there is a tie, the player order reverses from last turn. So basically it kind of makes things better and helps people catch up. That's another really good balancing mechanic. But there's more. Now, the way that the basically round plays is you go through 8 phases through the year. There's basically spring, summer, autumn, and the monsters come in winter and try and kill us all. So, at the start of the game, there is basically a reward system called Aid from the King. Now, this is another balancing mechanic. Whoever has got fewest buildings built, and we'll go to that in a second, gets an extra white dice to roll with their spring results to kind of get a bit of a head start on the year. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Then we have the spring productive season. Everybody rolls their dice and we collect resources. So for example, let's put some resources out here. So as we can see, the blue player here has got a choice between either taking a gold and a wood or a stone and a wood.
Green player there's got a gold, which is 2. Red player here has got a choice between gold and wood. Red player's got a soldier. We'll talk about that in a second. And green player here has basically got 2 of whatever they like and a +2 token, which they can use adding another roll to another turn. Now, there's a lot here to unpick. Not too much. It's not that difficult a game, but it's really, really good and there's good depth in there. So let me get into it a little bit more. On your turn, when you've collected your resources, you are trying to collect enough to build buildings. Now, these buildings will give a certain intrinsic point value, if you go for some of them, maybe some strategy value in terms of defense or certain special actions. Now, an important thing to remember is, at the end of the year, the monsters come and try and kill us all. Now, when that happens, the king will send a certain amount of reinforcements to help you. But other than that, it is your defense value that helps you survive. In the first year, you basically take a random monster from these characters here. For example, goblins. Oh, their strength 2, how pitiful. If you lose against the goblins, very bad things happen. If you win against the goblins, you get a little bit of reward. And there's other things, for example, orcs and barbarians, etc., with a strength rating from 2 to 4. Now, as the years go on, the available range of the monsters gets stronger. 3 to 5, 4 to 6, 5 to 7, and the final year, 7 to 9. So you might be facing demons at number 8. You get the idea. So, on your turn, you have basically got 1, 2, 3 chances to collect resources and build buildings. If, for example, you gained a gold and a stone, thanks to your rolls, you could trade them in and build a guard tower. And that gives you +1 in battle, very nice, and 1 victory point. Once you can basically build the first row of your buildings, you can then try and carry on sideways and build, for example, a level 2, level 3, level 4. Now, these don't replace your previous buildings here, you have them as well. However, you must build a rank 1 building before you can build higher. But you can build whatever row you like. So say, for example, you could build a statue, then a guard tower, then a blacksmith, then a palisade, then a stable, then a stone wall, then a fortress. What you couldn't do, for example, is jump straight to the fortress without having built the other ones as well. So very much is a case of there's a limited number of turns, there's a limited number of resources available, so which path are you going to go? Which again, each game creates different sets of results, different sets of buildings, and it means every game is kind of unique. Now you will find that certain players have their own preferable sets. For example, I tend to build an inn because it gives you a bit of a bonus every year. I tend to like this row here because it's good for defense. But we'll get into that as well because there are things that keep it fresh. Now, what else? Fairly obviously, I'm sure you've worked out, the better numbers that you get, the better rewards you get. So, if you only rolled, for example, a 1, a 3 and a 4, you're not going to have a very good turn. However, for example, if you rolled a 5, a 6 and a 6, you can go visit the Queen. Now, the Queen's rather excellent because she lets you take 2 resources of your own choice, that little green bag symbol, so you could basically have your free pick of whatever you like. Give you 3 victory points, nice. And this little sort of pink monster symbol means you can peek at whichever monster has been chosen there, which gives you kind of a forewarned, forearmed chance about what you need to do that turn. For example, if you know that you've currently got, let's have a look, a guard tower and a blacksmith worth of reinforcements, so you're +2 in battle. Now, because the king rolls 1 dice every single turn, you're guaranteed at least 1, so it means you're already on a minimum of 3. If, for example, there are 4 goblins, well, 4 strength goblins coming, as long as the king rolls 2 or more, you're safe. However, for example, if there were zombies at strength 5, you might start to be a little bit worried and you think, okay, I need a bit more. So your choices are either build more buildings that give you more defense, or in phase 7, you can spend some of your leftover resources to hire soldiers. And everybody has got different counters here that they can go on their soldier track. And these basically add to your defense. Now, these are obviously just for 1 year only. Once they've used to help you in your battle, they go and things start again next year, so keeping it fresh. Now, that important element of you don't know how strong the monsters are, plus you don't know what reinforcement the king's going to send, is a really big part of the game. It's almost like you're building, and then things are resolved. And that tension each round is a really, really welcome pressure, because not only are you kind of basically spreading out and forming your pack of resources, which I'll demonstrate, for example, here, but also there's this element of, will I be able to hang on? Because a certain selection of the monsters take your buildings off you if they beat you, which, for example, if you've gone the top route, which is very, very points heavy, and you've just built a church, it's worth 7 points, and the monsters destroy your church, whoomph, you're in trouble. You might have just lost the lead of the game. So, let's imagine it's a few turns in and we're playing red. Red has currently built a guard tower, an inn, a market, a palisade, a statue and a chapel and a church. They're doing really, really well. Now, let's say, for example, they're currently in autumn. They've rolled their dice. What they're thinking now is, right, okay, we're in, for example, year 4. Monsters are coming which want to kill us. So we know that we're not very, very high on defense at the moment. So do we basically just roll dice to gain resources this turn? Or do we kind of risk having the king protect us and not losing our precious stuff? So it becomes very much a decision-making turn around about the back end of the year. And this changes every single turn, depending, of course, what you've built to help you, what roads you're building up. And obviously you can stockpile your resources as turns are going on. So it's lovely if you can build a building every single turn, and you can't build more than one every single turn. But if you can't build it all in one turn, you might need to spend a couple of turns saving up to build your amazing cathedral, for example, excuse me, which will cost you 5 gold and 3 stone, or a wizard's guild that will cost you 3 stone, 2 wood and 2 stone. So these things are, of course, big money values, but they'll take a few turns to save up for. Overall, you'll probably build a good selection of buildings over the course of the year, and you'll have a nice amount of victory points chasing yourself around this scoring track. Now, it's very, very rare in our games to get probably beyond about 40 points. Higher than 40 points is very, very high, because it usually means you've managed to go this top route, which is very, very points heavy, but risks less defense. Now, we don't always play the same game each turn, but we do tend to get familiar patterns creeping in. Now, they're certainly not enough to stop us playing the game. We love this game, but we wanted a bit more. And that is where this comes in. So, KINGSBURG to Forge a Realm was the expansion released, which I was only aware of about 2 or 3 years after I bought the game. And as soon as I heard about it, I wanted it, and I couldn't find a copy anywhere for so long. Until about a year ago, I finally picked it up, and I was really, really glad. Now, it adds 4 mini expansions to the game, I would say 3 of which are fantastic. Now, for a start, do you remember our pack of buildings here? 4 wide, 5 high. Well, this goes a little bit better. It gives you 2 new rows. Now, it also orders them in terms of A to G. So in each room has a theme. For example, you've got the inn, the market, the farms, the merchant guild, or the palisade, the stable, the stone wall, the fortress. So there's a lot more options here. And again, little special effects, they're different. Again, it gives a bit more variety. But wait, there's more, because everybody is dealt at the start of the game 2 random extra unique rows. Face down, of course. And then you get to choose whether you want to replace either of the rows of your existing board with these. So let's see what we've been given in this case. We've got a spare row D, replacement row D, and replacement row E. So this gives us the lookout tower, the armory, the troop quarters, and the alchemist's guild. So that will be instead of the wizard's guild. So, for example, instead of basically +2 in battle, this gives us +1 battle, becomes +3 if you pay gold, obviously fitting with the alchemist theme. So it's kind of like very similar ideas, but slightly different, whether it's a little bit more focused on resources or defense or points values. There's all sorts of stuff to explore, and this gives a brilliant game flourish. So all of a sudden, your board is unique. No one has the same board, so it gives a load more replayability. Also, sometimes you might not want one of them. You might want to basically take one and dump the other. But this gives a freshness to the game that really rejuvenates it. And there's more. So, as well as basically getting a new board, you basically get a new specific governor to play. For example, you could be, let's have a look, you could be the sorcerer. At the start of year 3, build for free up to 3 buildings in the leftmost column. You don't get those corresponding points. That's kind of a catching up mechanic. Start the game with 6 points as a noble. The miner, at the end of every year, receives some free gold. The princess, start the game with the king's envoy, which is a special piece that basically lets you go on the same space as somebody else. Okay, so there's loads of different effects. For example, the politician gives you your own 2 personal spaces you can go to. There's all sorts of good things here, including a blank card, so you can make your own governor, which of course we did because my son loves dogs. So we basically made a court dog called Rex. It's a magician's court dog called Rex, who basically lets you spend a wood and get a point instead. Here boy, fetch. So that's 2 expansions, but there is more. There are kind of special events that happen once per term, and these kind of affect the board, affect certain provisions, affect resources, affect who gets what and what rewards there are. For example, tax raise. At the end of autumn, players may pay up to 2 gold each. For every unpaid gold by a player, the player loses 2 victory points. So it's kind of it's a penalty put upon you, and it's your choice which way you want to go with it. Military parade. At the end of autumn, the player or players with the most soldiers gain a victory point. Now there's little bits of help here. 2 quite really interesting ones here is basically the king is sick. Now there are 2 cards that say the king is sick. If they happen one after each other in the game, then the king is actually dead. The king dies and the game immediately ends, which can kind of give rid of an unexpected change of play really. And again, there's a blank card so you can write your own. Again, really good fun. There is a 4th expansion which is added in, and what it basically does is it gives you a certain amount of soldiers that you can basically have over the course of the game, and you can choose what to spend on this on which round. Now, this replaces the king's random die in terms of turn 8. Now, this is the only expansion pack that we are not keen on, because basically it takes away the element of surprise and the unknown that comes at the end of the year. There's 2 little factors. 1, you don't know how much the king's going to send, and 2, you don't know exactly what the monster's worth. So you kind of need that unknown element to keep the tension in the game. If you already know that you'll be putting through, well, I've already got 6, and I've already got 3, and I've already got put 4 more, and I'm already on 7, it takes away a bit of the tension and the uncertainty, which is maybe why people like the idea in the first place, but you need that, we believe, to kind of keep the game going. If you already get to the last phase, knowing easily that you'll basically beat any challenge that comes, it kind of takes away a bit of that pressure, which is enjoyable in the game. So out of the 4 expansion packs, 3 of them, yes, we will definitely use these. Well, we'll definitely use the extra player boards. We'll definitely use the optional player boards. We'll usually use the special governors every single turn. We've tried the special events sometimes, but as of yet, they're not kind of ubiquitous. We must play with those every single game yet, but maybe we just haven't explored them enough. So this one, if you're kind of not in favour of a luck-heavy game, because this already is a fair amount of luck in this game, if you want to remove some of the element of luck, then yes, this might be good for you. Fair enough. Some players like that. We personally like a little bit of element of luck because we think it adds a bit of spice to the game. So, KINGSBURG, an absolute majesty of a game. As you can tell, I quite like this. But just in case, let's have the final thoughts.
So, KINGSBURG, what do we think? Well, I've got to say, this is one of our favourite games. Yes, absolutely, I would recommend you have this in your collection. If you can find a game with it going on, please play this game because you will love it as a result. I would happily pick up this game and recommend it to anybody at any event, any convention. It doesn't take too long. It's not a short game by any means, but it's not a long game either. It's a beautiful sort of middle ground territory that you will just come back to again and again and again. One of the highest compliments I can pay of it is basically after I bought this game in the first year of taking it, I go to a local gaming club near us in Headingley, and this was the game that was requested the most from different people that I would bring along for us to play. My friend James, it's his birthday today. Happy birthday, James. He loves this game and we played it together so many times. I will happily sit down to a game of this at any time. It is accessible For a number of different types of players, people who like very, very tactile element, this is for you. It's not too complicated, so it won't put beginners off, but there is lots of depth, especially with the expansion pack, which adds mainly replayability. Not necessarily massively more complexity, but certainly so much more replayability. It's very, very creative. It rides that line well between mechanics and theme. It's pleasantly competitive, but a nice thing about people who want to avoid the main player versus player mechanics is you're mainly playing your own game. You can't interfere with the other players too much, obviously in terms of blocking who they want to visit, but you're not really getting at each other. So without that kind of negative nasty element, this again frees up to a much wider audience as well, because some people just don't like that player versus player side of things. So this is a game for, I would say probably for 8 or 9 upwards, but if you have a nice gaming family, they may be able to take care of it from a much younger age, and this will happily please you again and again and again. So, KINGSBURG, an absolute crown of a game. Thank you very much for joining us once again. If you want to get in contact with us, you can find us at rogueartistcreations.com, at Facebook, Rogue Artist Creations. Our Twitter handle is at RogueACreations. You can find me, Andrew Prowse. I'm GM First at rogueartistcreations.com. Thank you so much for joining us. This is an absolute pleasure to be here with you and share the experience. Next week, number 7, you guessed it, 7 Wonders.